I was really becoming a big bottleneck.
And you never know, maybe they will come back at some point to the company anyways with more experience.
First reaction was, are you sure? Like, I don't know if I can do this. Sometimes you really don't know yourself so well.
Welcome to the very first episode of Be-teachable leadership series. Some conversations deserve more than one episode. When I sat down with Zima Simonella, I realized we weren't having one conversation about leadership. We were exploring an entire leadership journey. So instead of trying to fit everything into one episode, I've turned it into a 3-part leadership series because leadership doesn't happen all at once. Over the next 3 episodes, we'll explore one of the biggest questions in our career. What does it really take to become a great leader? So I can't wait for you to experience the full leadership series. So enjoy.
Marco, welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
We are getting into a sunny weekend here in Italy. So,
Nice.
yeah, we had a few days of rain, but it's going to be nice weather this weekend. So, we'll enjoy it here. How about there?
Next question, please. We had
Sorry, Ireland. I know what you mean.
some nice weather in the past weeks, but we are not so lucky this week. But anyways, it's gonna be a weekend of shopping for me, so I cannot complain. I don't care about the weather in that case.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Sun or rain, you can always go shopping.
Exactly. What about you? Are you gonna enjoy the sunny days?
We haven't planned anything special, I have to say. So probably enjoy with the kids here at the parks in Milan. So yeah, no super cool stuff, but it's also nice to enjoy and spend time with them all together with no pressure, and it's gonna be nice. And they're happy about that. We'll probably go biking somewhere, and it's gonna be relaxing for us.
Yeah, a nice family moment. It's always enjoyable.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Especially because we have like a lot of birthday parties for them as well. So it becomes stressy even in the weekend. So, but they're having all of the birthday parties today so that we have the weekend. In fact, they're not running around in my house at the moment, luckily for me.
So, Marco, before we start, so you are a product leader with over 15 years of experience. You've been creating teams, you've been leading teams, and of course, all connected with that. So, from navigating complexity, making tough decisions, growing your team, right? I've been following you for quite some time, and I'm really happy to chat with you because, first of all, I really appreciate that you share your knowledge with the community and with others. And second of all, which for me it's also especially important, is that it comes from actual experience. So what you share, it's something that most of the time or sometimes I can also apply in my day-to-day. So I'm really happy that we're having this conversation. But maybe not everyone follows you. So my first question would be, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for the question, and I'm really happy also to have this conversation with you and this opportunity to share something more about that. So, yeah, what can I say about me? I can start from when I'm born. No, that would be too long, probably. So, I will just jump a little bit, a few months ahead of that. But I do want to mention that I have, because that connects to my path, honestly speaking, I actually have origin from the southern part of Italy, from Sicily. And I actually lived and was raised and born there until I was 18. And at that point, my father basically sent me to the north of Italy for studying. And I think that was kind of my first draft, looking backwards, because that was actually entering a little bit from one side, the real world alone, and from the other side, a completely unexplored space and place and culture as well, because there are, I have to say, pretty strong cultural differences between the north and the south, especially we're talking about now nearly 30 years ago when I moved. And yeah, and then I went. Funny thing, how I got to this role here, I went after that studying in Stockholm. So also another raft, I have to say. So another getting colder every time I
Exactly,
moved.
like more in the north.
I should investigate this field from the really warm south to the cool and frozen north. I have to say, in Stockholm, it was pretty hard there for that perspective. But in general, I have to say, that's where I actually got in touch with ABB, which is the company I work for
Mhm.
as a product leader. And you always connect the dots actually backwards. So at a certain point after getting in a few different companies after my graduation, I saw a position in ABB. It just connected me to that experience I had in Stockholm. I said, "Yeah, ABB is a Swedish company. Maybe I can use my Swedish." And I joined the company as a product manager. First time also as a product
Mhm.
manager, which I didn't know at the time what that meant. It was very kind of, at least to me, new role. And funny thing, my main reason for joining ABB was that maybe I could actually use some and practice some Swedish that I had learned in that experience. And I actually was put into a product line which was completely no relationship with Sweden at all. So that was interesting start.
When you make plans.
Yeah, you make plans and you end up in it. I was actually, I have to tell you this, but maybe we cut it all afterwards. But I joined just 1 month after one of very dear friends to me and colleagues still in ABB. And she was also joining as a product manager, so just 1 month before me. And she actually took the product line, which was manufactured near Stockholm. And I joined 1 month later and they gave me a totally different thing. I was
Oh
so
no.
jealous. So I started to hate her at the beginning. Why? I was joining because of this. You don't care about Sweden, but yeah, but it ended up very well, I have to say. So it was a fun start there, and yeah, that's what basically led me to product management. I had no idea before. I studied engineering as a background, so not really a lot into marketing or I don't think you even study a lot in university at that time, at least,
Mhm.
about product itself or leadership per se.
Mhm.
So, but that's how I ended up there. And yeah, and I spent 2 3 years as a product manager
Mhm.
before I actually got promoted. And yeah, and that's probably where I started to, let's say, get interested into leadership, even though at the beginning it was pretty like something I didn't know about and didn't even think I had to learn something about. It was, I think it's very common that it's very often considered as your natural progression in career, but over the years I've learned that it's really like a big shift, and that's where
Mhm.
a lot of people get stuck, I think, nowadays.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And if you do this research on, like the progression from south to north, I want to know about I want to know about because I'm also moving around in Europe.
That's actually what I thought connected us, because when you mentioned about your also life journey around different countries, including Italy, then in the end. So
But
yeah,
that's the beauty of when I look back, as you said, like afterwards you connect the dots. But when I look back, I'm so happy I did every experience I did because every single experience actually enriched me in a different way. And I'm so happy. And now it's the time to discover Ireland a little bit more. So that was not on my bingo card, but somehow it happened and I'm enjoying it already.
that's that's the truth in the end. Yeah, sometimes you have to go with the flow, I say. So
Yeah. Is this what you did? You went with the flow when you became a manager, or how did that happen?
yeah, I would say so actually. But it was not said on purpose. But when I remember that, I was, as I said, I was a product manager. I shifted then from one product line to another. I got more into a residential product line, and which for ABB is very small. That's why I called it now a raft, because it's a very sort of side business it was at the
Hmm.
time. And I joined that team as a product manager, still not leading anyone, because they had a very very challenging project. They want to launch a whole new product line addressing a new segment in Italy, and they needed young forces, I guess.
Hmm.
And so I was pretty young in the company since the 2 3 years, and they asked me to join this team and to launch this product. So I was working this project team. It was really tough, I have to say, for several reasons. We were understaffed as resources. It was pretty challenging, even though I learned a lot there. And one day, my boss at the time, he was the director of product management, he called me in his office, and he indeed told me like, we would like you to step up and lead the whole team. And yeah, my first reaction was, are you sure? Like, I don't know if I can do this. And but I do believe, and so but the answer from my boss was one of the first things I learned. He said, it's actually because you are saying that you're not ready is probably the right moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that stayed with me for a long time. And I do believe that. I think that the best leaders are actually not feeling ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right moment when you can make the step. And the other thing is that that's why you really need somebody who believes in you in that moment, because you don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you can make it at that point. And I didn't know, but my boss seemed to be pretty sure about that. He said, "I believe in you. I think you can do it. Trust me, I am doing it." So and that's what actually pushing you uh,
Mm-hmm.
to start believing in yourself. Because if they think you can, probably you come easier to convince yourself that you're capable of, even though it's the first time you do that, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know exactly what you have to do. But that helped me a lot. I wasn't reporting to this guy for a very long time, but
Mm-hmm.
in the period of time I was reporting to him, I really learned this, that he was
Mm-hmm.
his trust and belief. There was at that time I didn't really realize that, but now I looking backward again, I realize how important that was in that phase of my life
Yeah,
and career,
probably
of course.
probably he saw something in you that you weren't able to see yet, right? So that was, I think that's very important when somebody actually pushes you, even if you're not ready because of fears. Even sometimes we don't have like the vision for ourselves, right? So maybe we just, because as you said, if you're like in a stress moment, you're not seeing clearly, you're not thinking ahead of 5 years because it's, oh, I just want to, finish this week, this month, and maybe this quarter. But it's really good when you have somebody who actually sees more in you and pushes you, even if it's uncomfortable at the beginning.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And sometimes you really don't know yourself so well
Mm-hmm.
to really know that you can do that. But from, I don't know why, but from external perspective, it's more clear that you have at least the potential. Doesn't It's always a bet, I would say, but
Mm-hmm.
I think they can see better how you can actually face the challenges that are actually on their way to becoming a leader. And that's important. That's one of the most important things I see as a leader myself, that I have this goal of looking for them and pushing them to make the step if I see that there is potential, because sometimes you don't realize yourself that you can
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Yeah, I love that. And I would say your director was right.
Yeah, I think so. I'm a little bit biased, but I mean, I've been doing this for at least for a reasonable amount of time to say that he was at least right on the fact that
Yeah.
I could manage. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
do you remember at the beginning you said it was not easy, right? When you said yes, do you remember why you said yes to this position instead of like guiding something else, or maybe just say no?
At that time, it was in this specific case, it was really a little bit straightforward. So I was going to actually step up and lead the team I was in,
Mm-hmm.
which felt natural from that perspective. It was not
Mm-hmm.
a different choice like between A and B. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
we see you have the potential to step
Mm-hmm.
up. But then I think later on, that's when I had a little bit more what to call a crossing, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, between two choices. Because as I said, I wasn't with this boss for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
There was a reorganization at a certain point, as we're used now
Oh.
very often. It was not that often at the time, but that happened as well. And at that point, I did have a choice either to lead a team within a larger business unit than the one
Mm-hmm.
I was, and the other choice was to make another further step into this
Mm-hmm.
smaller residential unit, still leading the product team, but more as head of the product management in
Mm-hmm.
that very small division.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that choice much more as a life defining choice, because I would say joining the first one I described, it wouldn't, from many different rational point of view, would have probably made more sense,
Mm-hmm.
because you have a bigger business and you have a bigger team and the business is running well, so you probably get better chances to, which it's actually true, you get better chances also for the advancement in the organization, because if you can demonstrate that you can lead a bigger team and make more money, even it's much more established, at least in a company like mine, it is like, okay, he's a good leader, so he can step up and maybe have an even bigger team with bigger responsibility over revenues. And my choice was instead, I stay basically in the crazy waters, and we are running after even very small revenue and even very small successes, because it's so small and unstable and risky that everything counts. And yeah, maybe I was crazy at that time. I don't know. But again, the reason why I chose that, it had much less to do with, let's say, big versus small or money versus, I don't know, risky. It was because staying in that smaller team would have meant to work with one person in the organization, which I admired a lot. He would become he was my indirect manager until then. He was leading a bigger team of the whole division. This reorganization changed, and he would become my direct manager at that time. And I knew from other people and from my direct, at the time, interaction with him, that I would really learn a lot. He was like really the one I admired. I wanted to, he was like some kind of North Star, which I haven't found honestly any longer in the organization so far, because he's retired now since I would say 10 years now. And that opportunity to be able to work with a leader which I admired, and I thought he could teach me a lot. That was the reason why I chose that. And I still believe it was the best choice. I was not crazy, because if you put on the table the money, for sure, maybe you say you're crazy. But from that perspective, it was really, really the best choice, because I started to learn, and I would say everything that I know and that I a little bit share with others today comes from that experience, from what he taught me. Of course, I built on it, but it was really that spark which actually set me on that path, and that's why it was really life defining for me at that time. Now, when I look back,
It's so incredible, so interesting how we make choices, right? You could
yeah,
have chosen more money, and I've heard this also before. Sometimes you can get more money, but because you trust somebody, you look up to somebody, you choose that other path because of trust, learning, and I think that's so interesting, right? Because we think that motivation is just money, but it's not. It's really like trusting your boss and even the leadership within the organization. So interesting to hear that, and I'm happy it
yeah.
worked out so well.
Yeah, I can just support that honestly, and you see that everywhere. When you see in sports team, you see in other organizations, whenever you find that kind of coach, that kind of leader, which actually can give you this inspiration and the opportunities for you to grow, that you see the team actually automatically kinds of sticks to that. It becomes loyal, because the benefit, money is somehow a benefit, but it doesn't make the same difference for your life, I would say, as what you can learn from and grow in your role, in your career, and in your private life as a person. So in those cases, and I often say, when you leave and you say, "Oh, they pay me better," okay, that company is giving me more money. And very often, if you dig into that, really, you find out that money is a nice excuse that we give ourselves. We say, "Oh, they pay me more, so it's obvious, it's rational that I leave." But if you dig down, probably there are other things. You didn't like the boss anymore, you didn't like the team, you didn't see any longer opportunities for you, and that led you to say, okay, I just want to change. And money becomes the easy reason, rational. Everybody understands that, oh, they're paying him 20% more. That's, it's also easy answer, and I can tell a story about that later if you want, but it's an easy answer that you give yourself as a leader to sometimes. Oh, he's leaving. Ah, yes, but the other company was paying them
Yeah.
25% more. It actually takes away somehow, or gives you an excuse to take away some of your responsibility in that choice.
Sometimes it's really that people don't really dig down, as you said, but sometimes it's also probably like a mechanism to protect ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they get more money, I cannot fight back, you know. But your experience shows that sometimes people, they are not really looking only for more money. It's something else that maybe it's not inside of the team, inside of the organization or the company. So tell me a little bit more about how the first months were, right? Because you were a new leader, and I don't know how it was at that time, but not always there's like a leadership program or there's training enough for leaders, right? So sometimes you just like people are just thrown into the management position and it's wish them the best, but it's not easy, right? So how was it for you?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think nowadays it's improved for sure, at least in terms of training. But at that time,
Mm-hmm.
now it was many years ago, you were actually more thrown in, as you said, and just you will find out how to how to handle that.
Good luck.
And yeah, exactly. And also the topic is that even if I did a training at a certain point, it was, I think it was 1 or 2 years after I'd already started.
Mm-hmm.
So still maybe useful, but could have been useful to do it in advance as always. But I also wanted to say it was sometimes these trainings are centered on certain topics, which may be
Mm-hmm.
part of management. But at that time, I had seen very little training about what I would say it's leadership. So about how you handle certain situations, how you really build your team, how you have certain type of difficult conversations with them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I see this as more, and in my case, it was that kind of training in which you learn more about management as business management, how to manage, let's say, the team in terms of resources,
Mm-hmm.
that you have performance reviews and how you handle the performance reviews and so on. But it was not centered in the skills that I
Mm-hmm.
believe you should build as a leader. And to answer also your question about the first months, it was it was really challenging because I didn't understand exactly my role at that point. As
Mm-hmm.
I said, it was a little bit blurred, like I don't know exactly if I can do this and what this actually is. And for a first month, I felt responsible for everything that the team was doing, which from one side is good. So you
Mm-hmm.
are actually responsible for the team. But from the other side, it translated into me trying to be involved in everything. I wanted to be now understand all the projects which the whole team was doing. I wanted to get in the details of the project meetings. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
get in the details of the product requirements. I wanted to get in all the details.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you don't have time for anything else. And you don't have enough time for doing everything that I've just said anyway. But if you focus all of yourself on this, you really do not leave any room for building those skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was the problem I had at the very beginning. So there was this big launch that required a lot of effort, which was still ongoing. And I still wanted to get into all the other things that they were doing. And I was really becoming a big bottleneck because I didn't want anyone to make mistakes somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted our team, it was all, usually it's always well intentioned, like you
You
want
want the
your team
team to succeed,
to
right?
succeed. Exactly. You don't want them to fail. You want that the people admire you because you, as a team, and it's not even so egocentric. At least it wasn't my case. It was, I didn't want that people thought I was a great leader. I wanted that they thought the product management team was a great team. and
Mm.
and that's why I thought I had to intervene in every single thing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and improve them or look into the details to avoid mistakes. And it was really a big pressure that I had. I was honestly working very long hours every day, which was pretty typical also in general at that time, more than today. But it was very tough, and I hadn't understood at that time yet what was the real things I should focus on,
Mm-hmm.
which comes back to having a good mentor, which
Mm-hmm.
came with when I made the choice. He was the one which directed me at that point. He was seeing that I didn't have any more time. I was always busy running from one meeting to the other physically because there was not yet COVID and all this remote stuff. So I was physically running from one room to the other to different meetings.
So was your mentor that saw you and approached you and said, hey, you have to change something, or was already coming from you maybe? Did you notice anything in the team, how they were behaving, or how did this self-awareness came?
I think a few things happened. So at a certain point, one person from the team left, and he was really, really a strong performer, and he was really a very strong. He was also very young, and he left. He moved to to the bigger business unit, which I was speaking about earlier. And that's actually the time I a little bit answered myself, it's obvious they're offering him much better opportunity than staying here, so probably he left because of that. But reflecting after, as we're doing now, one of the reasons was definitely my contribution, because I wasn't having time to help them really. I was more in the controlling phase, I would call it, rather than in the supportive phase. And there was already some reflection from it. But I also have to say, when the other boss became my direct manager, he saw that. So I would like to say I was like the one who noticed and changed, but no, it was again somebody from outside. Was that boss that was, I remember still nowadays, he called me in his office. It was very common that we had some time very late in the evening, so I think it was like 7:30 or something, and he didn't never force me to stay that long. But that time he said, I want to speak with you today, and I have time at this time. So it felt like important, and I said, sure. And it was fairly common then. And he called me in, and he said, you're not gonna make it in this way.
There is so much to unpack from this episode. If today's conversation gave you a new perspective on leadership, I'd love to know what resonated the most with you. Share your biggest takeaway in the comments. I read every one of them, and I genuinely enjoy continuing the conversation with you in the comments section. In the next episode of our Be Teachable Leadership series, we move from becoming a leader to one of the biggest challenges every leader eventually faces: how to help others grow without becoming the bottleneck yourself. It's one of my favorite conversations from the entire series, and I can't wait to share it with you. So, see you next week.